Hey everybody, welcome to the Art of Podcast. I'm Bradley.
I'm Charles.
And today we took the political compass test.
Yes, we did.
Yep, we thought this podcast would be just us taking the political compass test, kind of going through the questions fairly quickly, discussing the ones that need further discussion, kind of sharing our results. So to start, I think there's two things we want to tackle. Was one, we both guessed where we would fall.
Yeah.
So where did you think you would fall? So I guess it's authoritarians up, libertarians down, left and right, as you would think of it, like liberal, conservative.
Right, yeah.
It's out of 10 in each direction, plus 10 or negative 10. Right? So what did you kind of think?
I guessed I would be slightly conservative, like very slightly
like
conservative.
1 or 2 points conservative.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then still slightly, but more more libertarian. Okay. So I would say 1 or 2 cubes to the conservative side and 2 or 3 cubes down to the libertarian side.
So I thought the exact opposite. I thought 3 or 4 to the conservative side, 1 or 2 to the libertarian side.
Okay.
And then the other. So should we start with what we got for the tests, or?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll just show each other our results.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go. Want me to go first, or you want to go first? You want to go first? Okay. So you were almost bang on. Yeah, you're
pretty much exactly
1.1 right, and then 3.1 down. So pretty much exactly where you thought. Mm-hmm. So fair. You're libertarian, moderate, like a moderate libertarian.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's probably the most accurate way to categorize me. Yeah.
Okay, mine.
I'd be curious to see.
It's a little. My guess is a little further.
Talk about your guess first.
Okay.
I guess.
So my guess. I thought the exact opposite. I thought I'd be 4 or 5 conservative or something like that.
Oh,
and just 1 or 2 libertarian, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And my results were 4.4 conservative, but I'm 0.1 authoritarian, so I'm barely up to authoritarian.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So you thought conservative-wise, you thought you were pretty bang on. Now, did you think you were going to be more or less authoritarian?
I thought it'd be slightly like 1 down.
So you're actually kind of authoritarian.
I mean, I'm neutral. I'm the definition of I'm a definition of a conservative. I feel like the dictionary definition.
Right.
Conservative, right? I'm halfway to extreme conservatism. Right? I will say though, which is the second thing I wanted to discuss, is when you do this survey, there's 4 options: strongly disagree, somewhat agree, strongly agree. Mm-hmm. So depending on how you define strongly and what the cutoff is, that would change those numbers. And there's a couple in particular related to authoritarian and libertarian. Where I'm like, what does somewhat doesn't accurately describe this, but depending on your definition of strongly, it would. So what was your definition of strongly?
Strongly is just like you how would I phrase it? You more than mostly agree.
Yeah, I thought in my mind strongly was you can have several exceptions to the rule, and even fairly broad exceptions, but generally, so like 70% plus was strongly kind of in my mind.
Right.
But you took it a little more intense than that. You made it sound. You were like 90%.
Yeah. Like, how often did you find yourself strongly agreeing or disagreeing? Because I found the majority of mine were like either just agree or disagree.
There was 7 to 10 where I strongly agreed or disagreed.
Okay, kind of the same as me.
Yeah, there might be a few more than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we go through them? We took screenshots of all the questions.
Okay.
So we'll start from the top. I'll read the first few if you want to read the next few, and we'll just switch.
Should we?
I'll just read out what the question is so the listeners can hear it.
Okay, and then talk.
And then we'll just say what our answers were quick, and then we can just move on if we want to.
What if we want to? Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Okay, so the first question was: if economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. Okay. I put agree.
Same.
Okay, because I was like, yes, it should. But I didn't go strongly because I thought maybe there's situations where if the corporation benefits, it long game.
Yeah, there's some overlap, of course. Yeah.
So same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2 was I would always support my country whether it was right or wrong.
I put disagree.
I put strongly disagree.
Interesting.
Yeah. So same kind of idea though, right?
Yeah.
I thought there's times where I'll support it if it's neutral, right? Even if I disagree with it, I might still support it. But if I think it's wrong, I won't support it, no matter what.
There's an element of patriotism there, like even if...
Yeah.
And what does it mean for a country to be wrong or right? Like it's obviously, like not everyone in your country is going to agree.
That's what I meant.
So what do you mean? Do you mean the government?
It would have to be a moral wrong of the government was how I interpreted that. Because or else it wouldn't be wrong, it would just be things I disagree with. Mm-hmm. Right? So
It's a weird question.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Number 3 was no one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it.
I put strongly disagree.
I put disagree. So it's yeah.
Okay, so why didn't you put strongly?
Because I think there are people that are too proud of their country in regards to no matter if it's right or wrong. And I just felt I couldn't put strongly disagree based on the strongly disagree of the previous statement.
The way I read the question was, is it foolish in any way to be proud of your country? And to that, I would put strongly disagree because I think it's perfectly.
I read it as it's foolish to be proud of it no matter what kind of thing, and that's what the agreeing was on. No matter what.
Yeah.
So you agreed with it with how foolish or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So I think it's just interpretation.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we kind of agree though. Like, be proud of it, but like I said, it just was that my definition of it was at odds to the previous question.
Mm-hmm.
Since I strongly disagree that you have to support your country no matter what, I can't strongly disagree. It's foolish to be proud of it because there's times where you can be proud of it when you shouldn't be, based on the fact I think it can be wrong.
Okay, fair enough. Fair.
Okay, our race has superior qualities compared to other races.
I put strongly agree, of course.
I put disagree.
Okay, for the record, I did not put strongly agree. I put strongly disagree.
I put disagree because I'm like, this is that once again how. Because I'm like,
what part of that could you possibly agree with?
No part of it. But
why didn't you put strongly disagree?
Our race has many superior qualities because people, and that's not even. I guess our race is my point. I should have put strongly disagree. But there's probably some races that have natural predications to certain things, right? There's a reason you see black people are normally taller, therefore better at basketball, and that's where I took it. I didn't take it in I didn't take it as a blanket superiority. It was there's niche things where certain ones could benefit others.
Maybe.
So disagree, but with once again, it was these vague exceptions does that make it a strong disagree? Or does that make it a disagree?
Okay. Yeah. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Agree.
I put agree.
Okay, so I have nothing to really say there. I thought it benefits you to work together at times. It's sort of
it can go south. I think the whole Al Qaeda thing.
Yeah.
That went south.
Yeah, I couldn't put strongly agree because you can have a tri-conflict too, right? Where 3 opposing ideas are all disagreeing.
Kind of makes you wonder about Ukraine. Hey, like with
we'll get
the
to
West giving us all these, with the West giving Ukraine all these crazy weapons, like
we'll get to a couple questions heavily based on later, some military ones. But you're right. Like, is that doing more damage now if the enemy?
Not now, but potentially later, right? Like if there's a massive regime change, and now all of a sudden they have all these Western weapons. Yeah. Anyway,
the next question, I guess, emphasizes this a bit more.
Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified.
Okay.
I put disagree.
I put agree. I was very neutral. That's one where I'm like, I wish there was a neutral, because I'm sure it is sometimes justified. You look at like some. Is there?
We're not super brushed up in international.
Yeah, like I'm just wondering if some Middle East conflict was that justified. Fighting terrorism in the Middle East, right? Was that justified? Some of it. I would argue some of them no. 2001, I think. 2001, 9/11. I think we've proven that was disastrous for a lot of parties involved. But
did we ever defy international law? By
invading another country. I think you defined. The UN didn't allow it, so the US went ahead and did it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I put it was a neutral. I was looking for a neutral. I didn't know, but
I don't know. I think in principle, international law should be abided by, right? It's but
that's not what it is.
Way more complicated.
The question's already saying sometimes justified. So it's already saying once in a while. Do you agree that it could be justified once in a while?
I would still probably say disagree.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, I was looking for a neutral on that one. Yeah.
There are some questions where you like your ignorance is probably affecting things a little too much.
Yeah.
But and then what was it here? There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I would strongly agree.
Me too.
Yeah?
Yeah, that was one of my first strong
So the number one, what came to my head immediately when I read that question was like Fox News and CNN in the U.S.
Which are those are two opposite ends, right?
Yeah. Well, because now like U.S. news in the U.S. has become entertainment. right? Like Fox News isn't news, CNN isn't news. It's just opinion pieces, and people use it as entertainment, but act like it's news. And I think that's so dangerous.
For me, my mind went to COVID on both sides again, too, right? Yeah, and people just reading something on TikTok or a YouTube short and then running with that. And looking at social media and how it was like people were getting upset and then people were banning each other on Twitter for these things. Like you're purposely channeling this one source, this one type of news that you want. Yeah. So I strongly agree. It is, or look at like, as much as I love listening to Ben Shapiro once in a while on the Daily Wire,
it's entertainment.
But it is like, and there's news in there, but it's editorialized so much that you need to take that into consideration.
And it's opinionated. Right?
It's that's editorial. Yeah, it's editorialized, maybe their own take on news, right?
Right.
Yeah. So same. Yeah.
Fair enough. It is entertaining.
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro's funny.
He is. Now the next topic is the economy. We're talking attitudes here, not the FTSE index. So the first question: people are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality.
I would agree.
I would strongly disagree.
What? You think people are more divided by nationality than class?
Yeah, because
that's like a hardcore SJW opinion. You're saying that like black people are more segregated because they're black, not because they're.
Oh, I took nationality as like without borders. Your nationality of different countries, like people from a different country, are divided more. Right? Like, you go to a third world country, there's a greater division there. I guess that's class, though, at the same time. Yeah, maybe I even answered that wrong.
I think you interpreted that totally wrong.
Okay, yeah.
I was like, wow, Bradley's a little SJW.
I interpreted that as a global scale. You look at nationality on a global scale and how that's naturally drawing lines between people compared to within a country. I was just saying, I think the way I interpreted it as no matter the two furthest people in America, like in like class, are closer linked, even if they're different colored skin or different race or whatever, they're closer linked than a person in America and a person in Uganda.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Right? So I think, once again, it just depends on how you interpret it, right?
I guess. Okay.
I wish there was a little drop-down menu that gave an example of the intent of each question.
Yeah, okay.
Because I strongly agree with what I just said, but with what you just said, I would have been strongly agree on your version.
Yeah, okay. I guess I'll say I put agree, not strongly agree, because I do think there is some truth, at least to the idea of things like white privilege.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think like a good example of that is like, this is going to sound racist, but whatever. At least I'm admitting that it's racist, right? If I'm selling my car in Kijiji, right?
Yeah.
And the person who comes checks it out is brown, I'd be like, ugh, in my own head.
Yeah.
Right? And it could be a perfectly civilized, brown guy who isn't gonna like tear the car to shreds and be a pain in my ass.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's so I think there is an element of like, you have more sort of you have more positive predispositions to people of your own race, whether you acknowledge it or not.
Totally.
But as a general statement, I would say that class is a more defining factor of separation than just nationality.
Yeah. Okay. If that's how you're defining nationality, then I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
Next question. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. What'd you put?
I put disagree.
Okay, I put strongly agree.
Okay.
And I mean this in how you interpret it.
You're way more brushed up on this shit than I am.
Yeah, so why'd you put disagree then?
Because I feel like employment is more of a stimulating factor to an economy than positive, like a well-balanced inflation.
Okay,
you
so
know what I mean?
My argument to that is that low inflation low unemployment directly correlates to high inflation, which causes a runaway problem, which will eventually lead to some sort of economic collapse, whether it be a recession, a depression, or worse, which is going to give you high unemployment again. So controlling inflation gives you a consistent unemployment rate, in theory, in the long term. Also, unemployment rate is a short-term problem. High inflation is can be a very long-term problem.
Right.
High unemployment is I shouldn't say never, almost never a long-term problem. Inflation, if not controlled, by definition is a long-term problem, which is what you're seeing now, and that's why the rates have to go up. Sure. And they're saying no matter what unemployment is, We need to get this inflation number down, because if you have runaway inflation, you have Argentina, and then people don't get to save. People don't, right? So that's
but in the short term, like in the long term, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Right. Inflation is a long term problem, but if you're looking at the short term, let's say like COVID, there's some post disaster crisis, and we need to get, in a post disaster crisis like post COVID is sorting out unemployment in the short term more important than sorting out inflation?
I don't think so, because you don't know if it's long-term inflation, right? The idea is that inflation's sticky. The longer inflation lasts, whether it be a year, 2 years, 3 years, the harder it is to get a rein on it, and eventually you have sticky inflation and uncontrolled inflation. But
can it at least be a balance that in the short term leads towards fixing employment? Like you're not focused on employment 100%, but there has to be some balance. But in the short term, post disaster, do you think there's
a stimulus,
something to be said for leading?
Not at the disregard of inflation, but you can focus on it less to focus on it.
Okay, that's kind of the route that I...
That's my 90% strongly... That 90% strongly agree. There's exclusive examples where the focus is still 20% on inflation. It's just you could focus temporarily on unemployment more. That's where I'm with it. But you would disagree. Okay. But that's just because you weren't brushed up on the topic, maybe, too, right? Is that why? Or
Well, I mean, it's like...
Yeah. I thought my strongly agree would be a hot take, so I don't know, but... Yeah.
Well, I mean, I get what you're saying. Maybe the question would be a little bit more accurate if it specified, are you looking at short-term or long-term?
Well, I think that's going to become a long-term issue no matter what, right? Like, inflation's going to become... And then I guess my last thing on the subject is, unless it's bad unemployment, but if you're talking just a few percentage points higher than normal, that directly impacts people, not necessarily the whole country. It's people within the country. High inflation affects every single person. Right. Negatively, which affects the economy much greater. So the next question is, because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation.
I put agree.
I put strongly disagree. But we've talked about this before. We have had a whole podcast on environmentalism before and how you regulate that. Because I don't think you should be doing carbon tax and stuff. I think there should be incentives on the other side. I don't think you should be regulating companies like that. But that's my conservative, laissez-faire, free market kind of side of me. That a free market will naturally regulate itself.
Okay, so my counter to that would be the number one interest of a corporation is always profit.
Yeah.
And overcoming that is pretty difficult.
I would argue I agree with you if it's a monopoly. But given competition in a free market,
I don't think consumers care enough about...
No, that's not... But it's they regulate. They look at ways... Companies continue to look at ways to try to draw attention. Consumers do care about that. I mean, we don't see it all the time. But you look at like...
Sure.
I don't know. I just think that
what about if it's a corporation that has nothing to do with like a consumer product, right? Like should we be regulating oil companies up in the oil sands to some extent to be environmentally friendly? Like they're not just gonna do that on their own accord.
They will.
No.
In the long, like they will. Maybe not as quick as you want them to, but they will. And it would be better off because now you're getting to the point where, because other companies don't want to use oil, you're seeing solar panels get created. Oil companies have to reduce the oil price, or else they have to find ways to reduce the carbon.
Okay, but we need oil no matter what. To make plastics, to make phones, no matter. So there's always going to be a need for oil. So they'll start doing it
as clean as possible, because that also helps them compete in the mind share of renewable energy. If renewable energy is starting to crop up and get supported,
but we can't make plastic with renewable energy.
No, yeah.
Right. So who are you competing against?
In the energy department. Sure. No, I'm saying now that you have solar panels popping up, wind farms popping up. Energy isn't solely renewable now, though. Oil's still competing in the renewable field for that. So for them to compete and for them to meet the public's desire, which you are seeing more and more, this outcry for less environmentally damaging output, these companies will have to compete and have to say that we have these targets, right? And these targets to be able to compete against the solar panels and the wind farms.
Compete
in a free market, for energy demands, in a free market, They would, in a completely free market.
Okay, so currently, like solar power, wind power, those are all vastly more expensive.
Yeah. But
than regular fossil fuels. So they don't even have to do that much competing to begin with.
Sure.
The competing they have to do is purely to do with how the public perceives them.
Yeah.
But if it's a corporation where their public perception doesn't matter to their profit margin, what incentive is there for them to be environmentally friendly?
So instead of regulating the oil companies, you can incentivize green companies. And that's not regulating, that's incentivizing. Make it cheaper for green companies governmentally, so the oil companies...
I agree with that, but I still think some regulation is required. And we're probably just going to have to agree to disagree on that. I guess fundamentally what we're disagreeing on is we don't think that... we don't agree on whether corporations can overcome... we don't agree on whether or not corporations can voluntarily overcome the need for profit. I just don't think they can. Like, I'm like a venture capitalist 100%, but I think if you're a corporation that doesn't rely on public perception, and polluting the environment is profitable for you, why would you give a shit?
Because society will.
No, that's what I mean. If your corporation doesn't rely in any way, shape, or form on public perception.
Every company does, though. Oil companies do. Like, people are just going to stop buying oil if oil's... Like, not everyone.
No, but that's not going to happen because we're going to continue to need oil.
You're seeing it with Teslas. You're seeing it with this. Yeah, you will to some
degree.
Yeah,
in some small, minute...
But the automobile industry is like 30% of pollution, right? Like, that alone, pushing oil companies to compete and say, we'll become more economically friendly. We'll start environmentally friendly. We'll start investing in our own wind farms. We'll start investing in our own renewable utility power so we can power those Teslas still, right? Like, that's like I don't want to say 35% exactly, but it is like you're talking a third of the world's environmental output is automobiles on the road. So it's not a small part; it's a large part, right? So if that's self-regulating, you're seeing cars self-regulating in a way. With Teslas being introduced, these electric vehicles being introduced. That's not the government regulating it. That's not the government forcing you to buy that Tesla. That is EV vehicles being sold exponentially more every year for the last 5 years. That is a market competition.
Because EVs are a consumerist product.
Yeah, but that affects oil and gas. But you're saying oil and gas doesn't care about consumers' opinion. They do, majorly indirectly.
In the area of automobiles, sure, but if you look at other areas like plastic...
But that's 35%. That's more than plastic. Plastic is a small part. If you're winning the battle, if automobiles are already making oil and gas companies be more incentivized to fight that and be green and try to reduce their environmental output.
We're talking about one aspect of one commodity. Yeah. We're just talking about...
You're the one talking about one aspect of it, though. Plastics, which is a smaller aspect.
No, but I'm using plastics as an example to try to generalize, right? Like...
I'm using automobiles to generalize, though, that it can indirectly still impact them. And the fact they have to fight and reduce their environmental output, if that makes sense, to fight the electric cars, that directly translates to the plastics, because any carbon capture technology they use for the gas will be used for the plastics too, right? Like it directly correlates over. So this industry that's the largest sole source of the oil expenditure and gas expenditure, if that's forcing them to invest in carbon capture technology, that's by definition going to help the plastics.
Let's look at it from a different angle then. So what about toxic waste from a byproduct, right? So if I don't know what you manufacture. Let's say you have a factory, right? And it is profitable for you as the owner of that factory to dump your toxic waste into the river. Yeah. And if there's no municipal regulation to prevent you from doing that, what incentive is there for you to not when you're going to profit from it?
You're allowed to... fair. Okay. I guess I'll say... One quick observation. You're arguing the authoritarian side and I'm arguing the liberal side. Or the libertarian side, which is funny. But fine. Sure, maybe actually we disagree that and I strongly disagree. Right? Like, but I definitely don't agree that regulation should be standard.
But do you think there should at least be some regulations? There should be some environmental regulations imposed by some government, whether municipal, federal,
I don't think federal. I think municipal. Sure.
Okay.
That just goes against my stance of federal, which is funny. Let's get him arguing the libertarian side. But
okay.
So sure, maybe maybe I'm somewhere between disagree and strongly disagree then, or something. Okay. Right. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe there's a podcast on this one.
We spend too much time.
Yeah. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea.
Okay, so I will admit, I didn't know that this was like, what is this, Marxism?
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was Marxism until I looked it up afterwards. 'Cause it's like, you kind of think to yourself like, oh, that's something I could agree with.
Yeah.
But then you look it up and you're like, oh, that's Marxism.
So I knew it was Marxism, so I put strongly disagree.
Same. It's
What'd you put?
What is it? Do you know?
Did you put strongly disagree?
I put strongly disagree, but only because I knew it was Marxism.
Oh, did you look it up while you were reading the question?
No. I knew from previous.
Oh, you're saying before you thought it was a good idea. Okay.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of like it's not that easy to really like decipher. Like, what does it actually mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I only voted on it because to strongly disagree because I know it's
you knew it's Marxist, right?
Because the idea of it is everybody just do what you can, you can get whatever you want. Like everything else we've
is that what that's saying?
Essentially, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
That's fine. We can move on. Yeah.
Okay.
The freer the market, the freer the people.
I put strongly agree.
Me too.
Yeah.
By definition, in my mind, that's that. Like, but that comes into the regulate. But so your regulation thing from previous is saying, but free isn't always the best thing for society. That's what you're kind of specifying there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I strongly agree with that, and that's why I think as little regulation as possible because I care about.
Sure.
Even though I'm mildly authoritarian, apparently, or slightly, I care about the freedom of the people.
0.13
10. Yeah. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product.
I would strongly disagree.
Me too.
Yeah?
Me too. There's resources
I don't know
that
if it's because I just don't give a shit. But, do you care? Do you care that things are now consumerized?
You can drink tap water. I don't understand. I mean, I think consumerism, the fact that people are willing to buy that bottled water means it's not a bad thing.
Sure.
The fact that you see bottled water everywhere means it's okay. Because I think, in general, society kind of, even subconsciously understands that water has to get brought from the Great Lakes over on a semi-truck or whatever, and then it's to be poured into plastic bottles that are made at a factory, and then they have to be transported to the gas station. You can't just have, even if there's free water, taps everywhere, you have to pay for the piping to run literally across the country, right? You can't just have free water unless you have a major overhaul of how the whole country is ran. Like I said, you have tap water if you don't want to buy it. I think the fact that companies can say, I think there's a market for bottled water, fine, do it.
Right.
So you kind of are in the same.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I just thought it was fun.
I thought it was a funny question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought or sold. I think we would both put strongly disagree.
I strongly disagree.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Nothing special about that. We just
not at all.
We're both homeowners.
Yeah. We are both homeowners.
It's a finite commodity, but it's a commodity, right?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty infinite as far as finite goes.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Anyway. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. This one actually took me a long time to think of the answer. I put disagree.
Me too.
Yeah? Was it difficult for you?
My first part of me that put me into the disagrees initially was easy. It was that I disagree with the premise of the question. I don't think that sounds like most rich people, the way it's phrased, it's regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing. That word many seems to imply most rich people do nothing, which I just disagree with as a premise.
Yeah, of course.
But then I thought about is it a bad thing that that's an option? And it's maybe slightly, and that's why I'm not completely strongly disagree with it. But I disagree with the premise. I don't think there's people. The fact you manipulate money even isn't doing nothing. That's a complex thing, right?
Right.
I don't know if they're talking about stock trading or day trading.
Well, the second part of that is important, and then it says and contribute nothing to their society, right? So it's are we just there is part of me that because I'm a huge respect self-made billionaires.
Yeah, that's why I'm not completely strong.
Right, you know what I mean? So it's now if you think about if you're someone who trades stocks.
Yeah.
And that's where your money comes from, and I mean, I don't know how much effort that requires. It definitely seems to me like it's not that much, and maybe you can elaborate on that.
It's a zero-sum game. Like, that's the thing, right? The thing is, though, is you need money to manipulate money. Like, you didn't become rich by manipulating money. You needed to have some source of money to be able to manipulate that money to get rich, right? You needed money to begin with to manipulate. Whether you're some high-up Wall Street guy manipulating hedge funds, you had to get in a position to become the owner of that hedge fund.
Yeah.
You had to work your way up there, which involved work. So maybe at the time now, you're just manipulating money and doing nothing, quote unquote, but you had to work your butt off to get there. Right? Like, it's not like you were just born, plop, all of a sudden you're in charge of billions of dollars.
But what about someone who didn't have to work their butt off to get there?
I think
they're rich.
That's just that's not the many. That's my issue.
No, I know, but I think you're a little too hung up on the many. Like, just in principle, someone who didn't work their ass off and they're rich as hell. It's like that as a concept to me. I don't like that.
And that's why I'm not strongly disagree. That's why I'm not. Because that does bug me. Yeah. It does bug me.
Right.
But I don't think it can bug me too much. When you look at the richest people in the world, you're talking about the guy who created Microsoft, talking about the guy who created Amazon, Tesla, the guy who bought Berkshire Hathaway as a textile company, converted it into the largest insurance company in the world, Warren Buffett. You're talking about like Larry Evans, who created Oracle. You're talking about the guys who created Apple. The guy who created Louis Vuitton is up there too, right? But they created a company, and they work 80 hours a week pushing that company to worth what it is. Like, by definition, they're not doing nothing.
Dude, Jeff Bezos gets so much shit, but he started Amazon in his garage.
Most of them did, yeah. Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon, and Google were all started in a garage from dropouts of... I think they're all dropouts of university.
Yeah. And these are all beneficial. Like, who's going to say that Amazon is detrimental to society?
And who's to say that he's contributing nothing and just manipulating money?
Right.
I fundamentally, like I said, I'm strongly disagree with the premise, but because the odd multi-millionaire, I would argue there's no billionaire that's contributed nothing to society, but the odd multi-millionaire, right, they manipulated money and somehow got rich.
And lazily got rich,
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I could agree. Agree.
I think nothing to be said. Tariffs are pretty standard.
Yeah. You bet. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. I put disagree.
I put agree. I was kind of neutral on it. I'm like, by definition, if a shareholder wants to invest in the company, they expect a profit. I'm not going to invest in a company I don't expect a profit. Therefore, you can't strongly disagree with
But when I saw only, so when you're saying the only responsibility of a company...
but that's not agree, disagree, right? Like, are you agreeing with the only, or are you agreeing with, like, how much should be paid attention to profit, right? Like, but what's the difference between agree and disagree there when it's that only word, right?
Right.
I don't think there's a whole lot of. I think it's just where you assume neutral is, right? But I was just viewing it as the shareholders only care about profit by some sort of definition. Yeah. If I give you money for a business, I don't really care about how you run the business as long as you're giving me my money back. So that's why I was agreeing.
Yeah.
Not strongly agree because they should have other thoughts too about like employee well-being and some sort of social thing. So you anymore?
It's a vague question. Yeah. No, it's just I just figured, is it maybe the primary responsibility? Yeah, but is it the only one? No.
Yeah.
And so that's when I saw only, I was like, well, I'm gonna disagree.
Sure. And I just was focused more on the one side of it for agree.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, the rich are too highly taxed. I put agree.
I put disagree.
Really?
Yeah, and just neutral, like
interesting.
So once again, though, you're getting kind of weird with this again. Is kind of going back to that last question. There's ways to avoid paying taxes, and that's sort of that's why I disagree. I'm like, I agree, but there's just so many easy ways for them to skip on paying taxes. Create a business in Sweden or Ireland. That's sort of where I went with that, which kind of ties into the other question. If that's what you mean by manipulating money and doing nothing. I still disagree with that though, because they had to get the money to be able to open up an account in Ireland and be worth it at the time.
So
that's where I took it.
Controlling, like assuming that the rich people we're talking about are law abiding and they pay the taxes that they should. Do you think to some extent they're too highly taxed?
Yeah, once again, yes and no. Yes, I would agree with you then because of. I think income tax is probably fair, but then they get all these other taxes. Like you see, like they're trying to push like the ultra rich tax now, where it's 3% of net assets.
You really think like 50% of income tax is
isn't it just 33?
If you combine federal and provincial, I think for some brackets,
but it's not the rich getting that. It's not the rich. It's the last cutoff is like at $200,000 a year, right? Like I'm assuming rich being billionaires.
But that's
very how you're defining rich.
Exactly,
too,
right?
Yeah.
If you're defining rich as in the very least people who are well off and have done well for themselves, I think to an extent those people are too highly taxed. Like your average doctor, your average lawyer, your average engineer, people making slightly north of 200K.
I'm taking rich as net assets of 10 million and up.
Okay, so we thought about rich.
Okay, fair. So,
Anyway,
I would agree with you if that was the case. I'm sure you at least kind of agree. The taxes are fair for billionaires.
Sure.
Okay.
Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. What did you put?
Agree.
I put disagree.
I was neutral with the okayness of it. You look at Australia and Great Britain. They, from what I'm aware of, they spend less on the medical system publicly, but they have in general better healthcare than we do. They have a mix.
I thought healthcare in the UK is going through a major crisis right now.
Maybe it wasn't because during COVID, but we worked during COVID too. I'm just talking about what I'm aware of. What I'm aware of is Australia and UK both do a private-public split, and they both, in general, get further with the public dollar.
The way I thought about it was if you have that private-public split, there's way more incentive for people to go work in the private sector.
I'd be curious
So what does
that
that mean for the public sector of healthcare, where people who are less fortunate have to go to? Does that mean they get lower quality doctors, lower quality nurses?
Or
That's
is it
not something that
how do you regulate that, right? I also wonder how much supply and demand regulate that too. If there's only so many rich people, all the doctors can't be for the rich. You have to have some doctors for everyone else. I wonder if that will kind of self-regulate to a degree with some mild regulation and stuff. I don't know. But I definitely wasn't going to be strongly agree. I was
going to be strongly disagree. I do think there is a benefit to a tiered health system for sure, but I think if you completely separate them, public and private, I just think it's...
So we're kind of on the safe side of neutral-ish. There's benefits and disadvantages, Anyway. Okay. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public.
I put disagree.
I put agree, and once again, just that how much... I was neutral, and I didn't know which way to go. Why'd you put disagree?
I mean, I don't know. It's just like...
Because false advertising, is that allowed then? Or do you have to put laws against false advertising?
Right. I don't know.
Because my thing was...
To an extent, maybe I could agree with this, actually, but...
Mine was just false advertising that's stealing money from people and leading them astray. You're essentially giving them nothing for something. That's where I went.
Stealing is different than misleading. You know what I mean? It's like...
If I can convince you that this concoction I created cures cancer, should the government come after me?
That's extreme.
No, but I'm going to extreme now. That's right.
In principle, of course, the government.
But the idea being, can I just create whatever I want and intentionally know it does the exact opposite, even, and just take your money, or is that essentially stealing?
Right.
At that point, right. So that's kind of right. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. Okay, a genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies.
I put agree.
I put disagree.
I think it depends on your stance on globalization and how you kind of want that, right? Should there be incentive for American-made things in America, or should everything... Because if you don't have any regulation for that, everything's going to be made in China. If you don't have any regulation at all, right? Everything will be made in China. You're not going to have any production.
You don't think there's enough patriotism for people to be like, I want
not when you can get something for a quarter of the price.
But some people don't care.
Really don't. But this, for instance, your shoes. You buy your shoes, they're made in China. If you wanted to buy an American shoe, you'd be paying $400 for a pair of shoes, right?
No. I don't know, man.
You'd be paying a lot more than what the $80 Adidas.
Sure, you'd be paying a lot more, but I think for some people, if the price difference is not so extreme, I think plenty of people would be willing to.
When you go to the store, is every single thing made in Mexico, China, or Vietnam?
Well, cheap, shitty things are
talk about the scale of that, though, right? The scale of that. If 95% of the population, which I'm sure it buys stuff made in China, stuff if 5% are patriotic, that is not enough to support a competitive clothing business, a competitive shoe business, a competitive plastics business and stuff to that degree. You need some regulation. It goes into the tariffs and stuff, right?
Yeah, so would you include tariff as a restriction?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I guess.
That's how I was agreeing. I don't strongly agree. I don't think you're banning every multinational company, right? But like, it's the same thing as what do you call them? Like antitrust laws and stuff. It's kind of the same thing. You need antitrust laws. Like, are you allowed to come in and say, Google, you now own the internet, we have to break you up, right? Like, I think that's warranted. And I think that sort of goes hand in hand.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. I guess I didn't think about that.
Okay.
Here we go. Yep. Social issues. Okay. I'm genuinely interested about this.
Me too. We have podcasts on all these subjects. We're not going to discuss them for half an hour each question, right?
It's going to be hard though, man. Yeah. It's going to be hard.
Okay. I also want to emphasize some of these are should. It doesn't mean would you enforce that. It's just morally should you, right? Should they? And that's why I took some of these too, which we'll get into.
We'll get into that, I guess. Okay.
First one, abortion when a woman's life is not threatened should always be illegal.
What did you say?
What did you say? Yours is the much less hot take, I'm sure. So you go first.
I would strongly disagree.
I would strongly agree. Because that's a moral should to me. I feel morally I should.
Okay, yo. No. Yeah. Illegal is not a moral thing. Illegal is a societal thing.
But I'm focusing on that should in some utopian society.
No, we're not talking about utopia. We're talking about reality.
Yeah. I still think should be the case. I know it would never happen, but I still think should.
When we had our abortion podcast, you admitted to me that you think abortion should be to some capacity accessible to people.
Yeah, in life-threatening conditions, and I said maybe in the instance of rape, and I said, but I understand that would never pass, so I'm okay with a line being drawn somewhere. And that was my stance then, and that's my stance now. I know that would never pass, so I'm okay reaching a compromise of some level of protection on either side.
Oh, man, we're going to be here forever. Jesus.
Yeah. That's only the first question out of 5. I guess this is the most intense one. But anyway. It ultimately comes down to... I actually want to do a follow-up abortion conversation, by the way. Because ultimately it comes down to the rights of the woman.
Okay, so quickly, I want to... Yeah. So we had the abortion podcast with your wife, Alex, and one thing that really stuck with me was she was talking about her friend that... was deciding whether or not...
man, I can't remember.
Alex was talking about she had a friend who was deciding about whether or not to get an abortion, and she ultimately decided not to get the abortion, and obviously she had the kid and everyone's happy. But the question I posed to Alex, your wife, was would you as a woman not rather live in a society where you have the option and you won't be criminally prosecuted for a potential decision. Yeah. Right? Yeah. What about that?
Yeah. So, and I believe she said, it's comforting knowing that. Yeah. But she also said, but what I want isn't what I need either. There's something to that effect. And if she didn't say that, it was afterwards, but I think it was during the podcast. The idea that just because she thinks it'd be more comfortable to have that option doesn't mean that option shouldn't be there.
Okay, well, dude, we're going to be here forever.
Yeah. But I guess... here's kind of it's a serious but sort of a lighthearted kind of poke at the situation too that I listened to actually recently in a podcast. Why are abortions okay? In a quick, if you were to give a 1-sentence answer, it would be something along the rights of the woman's bodily autonomy, right? Like that's sort of the general direction it would be, right? Like yes or no, would that kind of be the direction?
Sure, that would be the direction. Right? I have to ponder on the actual response.
But that's not often, that's a big argument, is the woman's right of autonomy. Okay. And it's like, but what about the life of this unborn baby, or whatever you want to call it? Well, no, because that's not their direct responsibility. Their own body is kind of them. That's sort of how this argument often goes, right? Mm-hmm. But I think... and you'll probably even laugh at this, but there's probably an element, you can agree there's an element here of truth, depending on how far you want to go with it. Those same people that say the woman's body to choose how they handle their body, no matter, and I've listened to a podcast where the pro-choice person was saying the woman has a right over what happens to her body, even at the expense of someone else's life. And that seemed to be this general consensus that a lot of pro-choice people have. And that's this baby, right? Like, what about when it comes to vaccines, enforcing vaccines for COVID? If that same argument would say that you should have a choice whether you get vaccinated or not, who cares if it messes up someone else's life?
How would you getting vaccinated mess up somebody else's life.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, well, kill someone. You give someone COVID and they die if you don't get vaccinated.
Oh, okay.
Right? But so in my mind, that's a hypocritical argument, and you often see the extreme pro-choice people that say abortions no matter what are the same ones that said every single person should be vaccinated and it should be enforced.
Sure,
and those are
opposing.
There's hypocrisy there. But you are pro-choice, and you think the vaccine mandate should have been enforced. So how would you explain that then?
So I would explain that as that, like, during COVID, our public healthcare system became really volatile because we weren't prepared.
Yeah.
And so for the interest of maintaining, for the interest of not compromising the public healthcare system, I think the vaccine mandates were justified.
But what happens if the healthcare system's compromised?
Then we're fucked.
What? People die?
Yeah.
Just like the abortion situation, right? Like it comes back to the abortion situation.
Right.
Right? Like it's
right. Okay, but here now we can go off on a whole other tangent here of like at what point at what point in the pregnancy cycle does the baby become
That's why I'm saying
an autonomous
in
being,
particular I'm talking about the people that are pro-choice up until 9 months.
Sure,
right?
Sure. But obviously
you've said yourself you would not want to draw a line on an upper limit when people can't get abortions anymore.
I did.
I thought you said that you wouldn't want the country you wouldn't want Canada to mandate an upper limit to when abortions can no longer be allowed to happen.
I did say that I wanted that.
I want to go back. I thought you
mean
said,
like impose a restriction at 6 months
that you cannot get abortions after 6 months.
Yeah.
Because I thought our podcast. Okay, I want to go back.
Wait, do you mean medical reasons excluded?
Yes.
Yeah.
Medical reasons excluded. Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, I want to go back to that. I thought we had a crux. I thought we had a huge argument where I said, "Would you be okay if you and me sat down and I proposed a limit, an upper limit, and you proposed a lower limit to allow, like, no matter what, abortions would be allowed until 12 weeks or whatever,
okay.
And no matter what, abortions can't happen after 6 months."
Yeah.
You said you didn't like drawing a line on the far end. You think it should just be a federally mandated allowance, and then it's.
Wait, so okay, upper limit would be you can't get abortions past this point, and what would the lower limit be?
You have to allow abortions up to 12 weeks or whatever. If the country mandated that and said it's up to the provinces exactly how they deal with it there.
Oh, okay.
And you disagreed with that premise, I remember.
Okay, that rings a bell now.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the premise was something different. Yeah. We can always get back to that.
We gotta move on.
Yeah,
man. Holy
but
crap.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All authorities should be questioned.
I put disagree.
Or sorry, all authorities should be questioned.
Yeah. I put disagree.
I put disagree, but I misread that. I would put agree.
All authority should be questioned.
Yeah, that would make me slightly more libertarian, I guess. That might have bumped me down to a 0. I misread that. I read shouldn't be questioned, but I think it should be questioned a bit because you have to hold accountable. And that's sort of where I went slightly.
This is definitely, if there were more options here, I would try to pick something more neutral. My thought process was like the authority of a police officer, let's say. I don't think that.
True. I'm thinking government.
Provided that they are doing their job in an ethical way, I don't think their authority should be questioned.
I'm thinking government. You should question choices being made, kind of.
Sure. Yeah. Again, that's too vague of a question.
An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I put disagree.
I put agree.
I was just like, I don't think if somebody shoots a person, you should necessarily go up and shoot them in the head. Like, I think you have to evaluate situations, and it should be focused more on like rehabilitation rather than equal punishment or equal retribution.
What about like, so when Trump imposed all of these arbitrary tariffs on Canada, we tit for tat imposed tariffs back. What about that? Because that'd
be a time where I'd agree. That's why I wish I was supposed to be neutral again, right?
Okay.
Anyway. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up the theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis.
I put disagree, but this one was difficult for me.
Okay, I put strongly disagree. Because I think there's something to be said for the arts and what culturally keeps your country. Okay. And that you should support that and those things. And I'm assuming those things in general aren't going to be the most profitable ventures, and that's why you don't see private museums. They're often public. They're always almost publicly funded to some degree.
Okay.
So I put strongly. I'm not saying it should be 100% be supported, but like at least subsidized. All those should be subsidized.
Yeah, okay. Fair.
Were you thinking about agree? Was that why I was struggling? You were struggling with it?
No, I was just like, I mean, Yeah, taxpayer money is obviously like trying to decide what that has to go to, especially in times of hardship is difficult. But like, I don't know. I mean, I agree that I think like art and history is important and they should be preserved. But if it's like a specific case of one museum that just needs like a giant bailout,
sure. Yeah.
I don't think the taxpayers should have to foot that bill.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess the one thing too though is I also know that like the budget for the arts for the US is like 1% of the military budget. Mm-hmm. So you should never really have to slash that. There's much bigger things you can like that is a indiscernible amount to your budget that you're slashing. Like if you cut that 1% of your budget in half, that's not really noticeable, right?
Exactly. So, yeah.
Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory.
I strongly disagree.
I put disagree because I didn't know if it was graduate school or if you should enforce that for university. I didn't know if that's what I was suggesting. I agree with you if it's just high school, but I put disagree if it was kind of a little more broad. Yeah.
Fair.
Also, I think there's some private schools maybe or some sort of like teach yourself, like self-taught courses where it
okay, I didn't think about it that way. Yeah, I just thought about like...
So we in general disagree. Yeah. Okay. Don't allow people to just run off.
All people have their rights, but it's better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind.
I assume we put strongly disagree.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I put disagree because does all sorts of people mean ethnic groups and cultural groups, or does that even mean like, is there like other levels to like, you know, like not to keep to your own kind, but like you're going to have natural tendencies as people, right? Like I like going to church and being around Christians a lot. Right? Like, or you like talking to people that are like very technically, mathematically intellectual.
I think what the question is getting at is like, is it better for everyone if religious people just keep to themselves? I don't think you would agree with that.
No. Yeah. But is it? Yeah.
Right? Is it better for all of us?
Like I said, I thought maybe strongly disagree, but I thought of it from the other direction of it. So maybe I'm strongly disagree on that then.
Okay.
Yeah, I have nothing to really contribute for why I put disagree.
Sure. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children.
I put strongly agree.
That's awesome.
What'd you put?
I put agree.
Yeah.
I put agree. I don't know. I'm obviously not for abusing children, but like.
But it says sometimes have to spank their children, and I strongly agree that everyone needs to be open to the fact you might need to spank your child.
What I thought about was like, okay, my dad only spanked me once, and it was literally in my entire childhood, I only got spanked once. But in terms of what it did for my discipline, I got spanked because I had bullied my sister in a way that was like very sort of persistent up until that point, and my dad was like, okay, enough is enough. You've bullied your sister enough. Here's a spank. And then I stopped from there on. Yeah. Right? Like it I don't know, man. It really if you're controlled about it, I think it could really instill some sense of
that. Strongly agree isn't the quantity of spanking. It's just that it's ethically okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. Well, that turns into the whole argument of like, should you be telling people how to parent their kids?
Yeah. Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is not something I could agree with. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents? What did you say?
Strongly disagree.
I could strongly agree. You don't think it's natural for children to keep secrets from their parents?
Okay, so I took it. This got revamped in December 2022. And it says last updated, questions last updated December 2022.
Okay.
And I took that this question was directly in regards to like all the stuff happening in the States. Like you don't have like the transgenderism and stuff and the parents and the teachers. I took it as being strictly in regards to like it's okay to support children to keep secrets from parents, and I don't agree with that.
I don't think the question has anything to do with that. It's just saying, is it natural for children to want to not tell their parents things? I think
it's not saying for children to want to. Is it natural for them to keep secrets? Like, is that a natural way of things that we should be supporting and stuff, right? And I don't think that should be a supported thing. Sure, it's natural. Kids are going to not want to tell the parent that they punched someone in school.
I don't see any support aspect in that. I don't know, man. You were a kid. You obviously kept secrets. What kid doesn't keep secrets?
So maybe yeah.
Right? I don't know. Again, it's a weird question, but I just...
It is. And I have this bias of, I feel like that's what it was written in regards to, right? Is like, in Florida, people being upset because they made a law that a teacher can't, like, there was a law that, maybe it was in Florida, probably was, I don't know which way the law was, but the law was like, if a kid's transgender, they can tell the teacher, and the teacher's not allowed to tell parents, or whatever, or something like that. Or something. There was some law like that was going around, or something. When Florida was fighting it. Maybe it was around the time of the Don't Say Gay bill, which is a silly name for a bill that wasn't named that. But I was seeing it through a lens. So maybe I had a bias that I shouldn't have had in there.
Yeah, okay.
Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense.
What did you say?
Agree.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what a drug.
I just think, I don't think it should be.
Devil's lettuce.
I just have, if I've maybe more of a neutral stance of just like, and
I
maybe
kind of
it's
assumed you'd put disagree. But.
Yeah, my thing though is if alcohol is legal and cigarettes are legal and all these things.
I'm pleasantly surprised. Do you want to get high?
No,
sure, I'll go get my weed right now. We'll smoke up.
No. So once again, that's a bit contextual of the society we're in, right?
Sure,
like,
okay.
If you didn't have this world where like alcohol and cigarettes were legal and it was only like I wouldn't support for marijuana to be legal, right? But given this, it's like it's fine that it's legal.
So from my perspective, as someone who uses marijuana,
did you put strongly agree?
Yes.
By the way.
I put strongly agree. As someone who uses marijuana, but I'm obviously very cautious about it.
Yeah.
I think like marijuana has a lot of benefits. Like a lot. Yeah. I think it has a lot of benefits, and for that reason, I don't think it should be a criminal offense. But I think, like alcohol, you have to be careful with it, and I think a lot of the norms around marijuana that perpetuate among stoners, saying that like, oh, it's fine to drive high, and oh, you can't be addicted to weed. I think those are all dangerous. And
but that's not what the question's asking, right?
Exactly. And anyway, we had a little podcast.
I guess one quick thing about this too is, I'm not necessarily even saying that this condones getting super high on it. Right? This just says personal use to some degree, right? Like I don't support going and getting wasted all the time, but having a beer is fine.
Yeah,
right? That's sort of how I took it too.
Cool.
The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generations to find jobs.
I could strongly agree.
Me too.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay, I thought I'd be on the opposite. I don't know exactly what I thought maybe you would have just went more like just to teach them and learn them, which is true. But that's ultimately
benefit,
so they get a job.
The prime function of school should be.
So quick discussion then.
Okay.
Do you think that's what the prime function of a school is right now?
Right now? Yeah. Of universities? That's a loaded question. Of elementary and high schools, I would say yes. I think that generally prepares people for getting.
I think in general, I don't think it does a good enough job. I think it can do a better job, right? Like,
really?
Yeah, you don't really have a course. You had this like comms class you had to take in grade 10, and you had to take a quiz to find a job.
Options,
but like, why isn't there courses that are like, this is what it's going to look like. This is what you should have a course about just like life after school, right? Like I don't know, like you.
That has nothing to do with finding a job, though.
No, it is, but no, getting a job, being educated for a job, and understanding that, right? Like it is, like in a way, it's like there should be more emphasis on like, here's the options when you're done school. You can try to find a job right away. You can go to a trade. You can go to university. Those are kind of your three options.
Oh,
and here's where these look, right? Like preparing you to decide what you want to do too, which we don't do.
I was just thinking purely from an academic standpoint, like training kids in like math skills, science skills, English skills, social skills.
Yeah. So I agree. I agree. I just don't think it does a good enough job quite yet.
Now, okay, so universities. Do you agree with me that it's a loaded question?
I do.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's loaded?
Because I think it depends on the program. I think some programs do an incredible job of that, and some programs do a god-awful job of it.
Yeah. And I think it's clear that some programs are just trying to make you qualify for the arbitrary 40 credit bachelor.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, you don't... or 120 credits, 40 courses or whatever it is. Because, like, you see a lot of these degrees where it's, here's the 8 courses you need to take. And now I got to fill out another 32 courses for the rest of this degree.
And then a lot of those degrees you can't do anything with. You need to get a master's after the fact to do something with. So it's like if you replace those 32 useless courses with useful courses, could you potentially not need a master's degree, pay more money to the university?
Yeah.
Right?
It's like a subscription scheme. They're trying to make you stay there as long as they can, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Okay, people with serious disabilities, inheritable disabilities, should not be allowed to reproduce.
I put strongly disagree.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that
I thought about just putting
because I'm diabetic? You just put it because you didn't want to be like, you shouldn't reproduce.
No, I thought about putting disagree instead of strongly disagree because I didn't know if maybe there were some that aren't like. But then I'm like, no, I strongly disagree. People have the right to have a kid.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I should clarify that I'm diabetic, so I'm pretty happy that I'm allowed to reproduce.
My thoughts were never like I don't know. I just thought like, I don't know. Like, I won't get into it. Yeah, I'll be doxxed for even just voicing that. Like, no, but like, I guess I took it more as like, like your kid 100% will need to be hooked up to a machine to breathe for the rest of their life. Do you make that illegal for that kid to be born though?
Yeah.
Right. Like that's why I was like, okay. I thought about that and I'm like, is there some situation where that can be kind of regulated? But I'm like, no, like that's weird. No, not really. Right? Not ethically.
You would either have to regulate the sex life of that person, or you would have to mandate an abortion.
Yeah.
If they ever got to the point of conceiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline.
What'd you put?
I put disagree.
I put agree, and I was looking for neutral again.
Yeah.
Maybe I would even be disagree if I meditated on it a little more.
I mean, I do think it's important.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. I think children learning discipline is
depends what you mean by children. Are you talking 2-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 15-year-olds? There's a different answer.
I kind of thought of it as like school-aged kids.
Yeah, I was thinking like 5.
Really?
Yeah. In which case, I think there's less. Maybe it's a little more for discipline. And I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're not in the wrong. We're not disagreeing, really. So.
Moving on. There are no savage and civilized people. There are only different cultures.
What'd you put?
I put agree.
I put disagree, but I think agree. Okay, clearly they're trying to say, are you racist? They're trying to say, are you racist, right? But like, in my mind, it's like, so why'd you put it? I mean, you should be the one treading carefully. You're the one venturing on more racism there, aren't you?
No,
there are no savage and civilized people. There are only different cultures. Agree. Oh, okay.
I think disagree is the more contentious.
True, you're right. I can't. That's what I mean by people. Like you go to an island in Africa where there's people that throw spears at you if you try to arrive.
That's obviously uncivilized, right?
Yeah, but is that culture? Or is that the people? Is that tribe wanting that? Because if that's what the people want, then that's the people, right? So my thing is,
I don't think that's a cultural thing because they have no exposure.
It's a people thing.
Right. I think the question is getting at like. I don't know. Again, like we could have said this. You could say the same thing about like when Europeans encounter Native Americans for the first time.
Yeah.
Right. Would they be considered uncivilized?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And I'm not saying black people are savages and uncivilized.
Right.
And that's why I'm thinking it's more of a people thing and not a culture thing. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying First Nations are uncivilized or less civilized, but ones that live on certain reserves have less civilized cultures and values, and it's not uncivilized in a bad way. I'm just saying they don't have this civilized the structure of civilized like as we know civilization.
Yeah.
So then it's not it's not a cultural person. It's not all First Nations. It is a people person. It's the people that choose to stay there.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think
if you de facto interpret civilized as something that's positive. And as opposed to something that's more something that's more like defined as this, not something that's just positive or negative.
Well, couldn't you argue then that agreeing is actually the more racist thing? I'm not calling you racist with this, but because cultures is more saying all. There are no savage and civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. Is that not saying like? I don't know. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I rescind that.
In this case, like, if you're like, because the question is directly comparing savage and civilized, and I think by including the word savage in there, you're imposing like, one is right and one is wrong. Yeah. Not civilized as in a definitional sense, but civilized as in it's better than savage sense.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think agreeing with that.
But I think
could be racist anyway.
I think the issue though is that it uses peoples in the first phrase and cultures in the next. right? Like,
well, that's kind of the point of the question, isn't it? Like, it's separating. It's making it's separating. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Like, would you say North Korea is as civilized as we are? I would say no. That is a blanket statement. I would say that they're not as civilized. And not the individual people, but them as a collective peoples of the country of North Korea.
Right.
Right?
So now, but would you... There are no... Yeah, okay, that's a good point. I didn't think about it that way.
That's, I mean, it is funny to say peoples, because it's making you think, like, that person's uncivilized. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, it's a vague...
Because I would argue there are cultures that are less civilized. North Korea. Right? And it's not saying the people that live there...
is it a culture? I don't think North Korea is a culture.
No, but... Sure, but it's not I'm not talking about the Joe Schmo there either, too, because they're forced into the situation, right? It's like that governing peoples. It's the... I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe the I don't know. Maybe North Korea is a culture, man. Like,
who knows?
Anyway. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. What did you say?
Strongly agree.
I put agree.
Yeah.
And the only reason I put agree and not strongly agree is because I thought about it in a medical sense. It's like, because I think everyone should be entitled to healthcare. And I was like, if someone is able to work but refuses to work, should they be denied healthcare? And I thought, no, I don't think so. So I'm going to put agree and not strong.
Here's an interesting case then. Okay. And I agree with you. Okay. But I want to like kind of run with this a bit. The ethics to it. And sort of like we're taking it to its conclusion if you keep on following that.
Sure.
You have like the van life people that don't work and they just live in a van. It's communities and they do that, right? Mm-hmm. And part of me is like, that would be fun. That would be appealing. But if every single person did that, you wouldn't have a medical system, right? Like if too many people did that, you would have a breaking point in society. Yeah. So should you draw a line and say, just so you know, you guys are 30 years old and completely able to work, you have an education, but you have decided you don't want to work and take part in this society. You don't want to. Mm-hmm. You're not living in a house. You're not working a job. You purposely turned your back on this society. But you want it when you need it. You just don't want it now. Right? Like, is that a moral issue though? Like, I don't know if that's okay. If you're saying I'm not working, so you're not getting any of my tax money, and I'm choosing not to. I can't. I'm not saying that they can't. They can't. Yeah. I am choosing not to. I have a doctor's degree, a doctorate. I have an engineering degree. I've had job offers on the table, but I chose to buy a $100,000 van and go camp in Utah or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that not? If I'm turning away from society, is that really rational that I can say, "Oh, I broke my leg, now heal my leg for free"? I don't think
are you really? Can you de facto consider that turning away from society? I don't because
if you're not wanting to contribute,
because people can do whatever they want.
If you're refusing to be a contributor, yeah, you can, but then don't expect to have a social health care, a social net. If you purposely turn your back and don't want to contribute in any aspect to society.
But what about healthcare? What about if in your van life experiences something you get injured in some fundamental way? Should you go to a hospital and not be accepted?
That's what I mean. Right? That's what I mean. I agree with you. I just don't know why I agree with you, right? Because I feel like there's an argument for the other side that I strongly...
I mean, I get what you're saying, is that if there were too many van lifers, that would be a problem.
Society would collapse. Literally, at some point, society would collapse.
Sure, but yeah, I don't know. I think given the fact that we have a normally functioning society, if we have the occasional van lifer, I don't think they should be refused public services because they don't have jobs.
Sure, okay, but let's look at another example then. People getting people abusing workers' comp checks or EI checks.
Yeah, sure.
I think that being the more common example though. And I firmly agree they should not get any support. Like if somebody's trying to just milk something for 4 years, 10 years, they broke their leg and they got laid off and they're just taking checks. COVID checks being another good example of that, right?
Right.
Just from a moral standpoint of objective, not even fairness, but just kind of the social contract. The social contract. They're breaking the social contract.
Yeah.
Right? The social contract is. You will get a job. You will pay some taxes. You don't have to get a high-paying job, but if you get enough to get by, pay for your house, you take part in society, and with that comes these certain benefits. You get free healthcare in Canada. You get this and this and this. Mm-hmm. If they are ignoring their end of the social contract, should there be an expectation for the government or the governing body to uphold its end still?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all. Yeah. But
fair enough.
Yeah. You agreed though, you said.
Yeah, I agree.
I was somewhere between the two. I was like,
what are those vague?
I wish there was a somewhere in between. Agree.
Yeah.
When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things.
I could disagree.
Me too. I just think you have to deal with it at some point.
Yeah.
I don't really understand what it has to do with authoritarian or conservative or anything.
I don't know either.
I thought it was kind of a goofy question, but
that is kind of goofy.
First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within the new country.
I would strongly disagree.
Me too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some that can't, but you can't say that.
It depends what you mean by integrated as well, right? Like, I mean, you can, like, so my parents are first generation immigrants, right? Yeah. They came from South Africa. South Africa's culture is very distinct in a lot of ways, and if you come here to another country and you don't get rid of the culture from your previous country of residence, but you kind of bring it here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing.
We're on the same page, yeah.
Okay. Anyway. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us.
I wanted a neutral one here because I think it depends on I put agree.
I put agree too.
I just think it depends on the industry. Depends on...
Yeah,
I don't know.
It depends on like... Yeah.
Like, are you talking about monopolistic empires? Then probably not, and that's why I might strongly agree. But in a fair competitive scene, it's going to ultimately benefit everybody. So, no broadcasting institutions, however independent its content, should receive public funding.
I put strongly agree.
I put agree, and I probably should have put strongly agree. Yeah. I just thought maybe there's some instance there's some, but you have to make it very known it's funded.
Here's the thing. So the CBC in Canada gets a lot of shit from conservatives for being publicly funded. Yeah. I watch the CBC because I honestly think it's the best newscast, and I don't think the lean is as bad as people say, but I think in principle, you shouldn't have a newscast that's funded by a political government.
That's why I said just agree
Yeah. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. I put disagree.
I put agree because my mind went to like the gun laws and stuff and everything like that, right? And you had like the NSA in the States and those acts that Obama passed that kind of came out as being...
So what I was thinking about was airport security. Like
even airport security though, I don't know if it does as good of a job as people. Like, I don't know if that's yeah. But that's, I guess, a different topic. But yeah,
I guess.
So you put disagree? Sorry, I put agree.
Yeah.
So we're not far from each other anyway.
I mean, again, the whole gun control thing is a good point. I'm definitely like pretty pro gun, but not crazily. Yeah. You shouldn't have a license, not just a background check.
And it probably depends if you have the filter of being Canadian or American too.
For sure. Yeah. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system.
What'd you put?
Okay, I put disagree.
Okay.
But I think fundamentally it's true.
I put strongly agree fundamentally.
Okay.
Strongly agree in that is the advantage. There's no other advantage really, but that is by definition the advantage. So I strongly agree.
So maybe I should have put strongly agree then. I don't know.
Because you're saying it gets abused. You're just saying it gets abused or something, right? Or like But literally based on our conversation, our podcast that we recorded, we have to strongly agree with that.
Yeah.
That was the advantage of it.
Okay, I should have put strongly agree. It's not to say that it's better, because I don't think so.
No.
In terms of... Okay.
That's not to say one-party states are better because of this. It's saying this is the advantage it has over a democratic state.
Okay, I should have put strongly agree. Anyway. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried.
What'd you put?
I put agree.
I put strongly disagree. Once again, the NSA stuff. There, right?
I mean, I thought about that, and I was like,
there's,
It's unsettling. My thought process is like, what's really going to happen if you're not a wrongdoer? Like,
true, I guess it depends on what worry means even, right?
Yeah.
Like, are you worried because you're going to get punished, or are you just worried because of your freedoms and rights?
Yeah, okay, that's the other side of it too. Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
So we're far away, but we kind of agree.
On
how you're answering.
The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crime.
But disagree.
I put disagree too.
Yeah,
in principle.
Yeah.
This isn't really something I give much thought to because outside of, in Canada there is no death penalty. It's been that way for like decades.
Yeah, and in general I don't agree with it, but I'm just like maybe there's some. I don't really have enough meditation on the idea for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a civilized society, one must always have people above it to be obeyed and people below it to be commanded.
Again, this is one of those I could disagree
too.
Yeah.
Didn't really have it. It's a weird.
It's a weird when you say like obeyed and commanded, like you read that and you're like, well, I don't agree with that 100%, so I'm just gonna put disagree.
Is it trying to get a react? Do you think these questions are trying to get a specific reaction out of using words like that?
I think some of them are. Like if like I do think some of these questions are worded to sort of strike a political itch or strike a political nerve with some people, and then they would I think so for sure.
Do you think then that I don't know. Oh, there's like bias too in the writing of this. Like if the people that made this, I guess probably a collective board, if they tend to be more like authoritarian, libertarian, if they use words that make things sound. No, I don't think so
because I think it's pretty across the board in terms of like.
But is there not political bias at all in there? Like are you saying it's completely?
I think there is bias, but I think the distribution of biased questions
hopefully
is balanced, right?
At least close enough.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
I think so. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all.
I put agree.
I put strongly disagree.
I just have no real thought on it.
Yeah,
and it's more of I'm just like, it depends what you mean by abstract.
Right.
Like a handprint on this huge canvas and people reading into it as it meaning all these profound things. I'm just more of like a.
I mean, you're not an artsy person.
Yeah.
I'm not an artsy person either, but in principle, I think.
Sure, maybe in principle.
Art is subjective.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, in criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation.
I would strongly disagree.
I would disagree.
Yeah.
I think punishment is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, rehabilitation is probably more important.
I think,
but as a general rule, I would say if you do a really terrible thing, you're put in jail not just to be rehabilitated, but to be punished.
Yeah, I would say if a crime is like less than 5 years, the goal should be almost solely rehabilitation.
Yeah.
But if it's past that, it's going to mix the two. And as it gets farther, it's more punishment.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals.
I put strongly agree.
I put agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I should have put strongly agree. Okay. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist.
What'd you put?
I put agree.
I put strongly agree. By definition, for society and progressing things, right? Like,
okay, you like music.
Yeah.
Where would your life be without music?
No, true. I'm just saying, if there hasn't been music the last 200 years, we would still be where we are today, largely as a modern technological society.
But that's not the only part of society that matters.
No, I know, but I'm saying, but I strongly agree that it is more important. I'm not saying it's 100-0. I'm just saying it's like 70-30 or whatever.
I mean, I think it's more important, but I don't think.
Yeah. So that's why you were agree.
I just put agree, but artists,
I agree with you. Yeah, it's important. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just strongly agreeing that these are more important.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Yeah. Once again, it's what strongly agree and agree even mean in that case, right? Like, is it how much more important, or is it like how strongly you agree that it is?
Yeah, exactly.
It goes two different ways.
Yeah. Okay, mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be a homemaker.
What'd you put?
I put disagree.
I put agree. My thing was given that they are a mother.
Sure.
Right? Because the mother's in there. If it said woman, I would have a different answer. Right? But it says mother.
Yeah.
So I
Fair
put
enough.
agree. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good distinction to make.
So we kind of not far apart.
Yeah, I mean I don't know. Generally I think I don't know. There are stay-at-home dads.
Yeah, but it's easier for them.
Fine.
There's advantage like breastfeeding and stuff, and the like maternal bond with the child early on. It makes more sense for it to be the mother, and that's why I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries.
I don't know what plant genetic meant, so I put disagree. Yeah. I'm like, I don't care if they're splicing genomes of plants, which is where I went with
that. I put agree, but I really didn't know what the hell this question meant.
Yeah.
Okay, skipping. Yeah. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity.
But strongly disagree.
I put agree.
Okay. The established...
This seems like something a conservative person would strongly agree with. Because if you're making peace with the establishment, it means you're making peace with, that came across to me as like it means that you're accepting what has worked for society.
I'm taking it as
that's obviously a conservative.
I'm connecting it to the questioning authority, like my thing about like you should question authority sometimes. I'm taking it into that way, that like you shouldn't just. Maturity is having your own morals and values and staying to those and not just following the establishment, right? Like it's that like you understand that the establishment exists, but you don't have to make peace with it. You can listen to it but not make peace with it. Understanding you don't have to just blindly follow the establishment's the maturity.
We might have interpreted the establishment slightly different. I think I interpreted more like abstractly.
Yeah, I
like
took it more literally.
As sort of something that just applies to
I took it more
any...
literally as like a governing body. Yeah,
I
would agree. I don't know. Yeah.
Like, can the establishment mean that what about the capitalist establishment? Right? Like it's sort of a more abstract idea of like...
Sure, but even then, you're allowed to question it.
You're allowed to question it,
like,
but...
maturity is realizing there's faults and flaws in things, I think. And that's why I said I strongly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
Astrology accurately explains many things.
Strongly disagree.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. The only thing that made me think maybe I disagree or agree in a sense is they're so vague in their things that you can make
exactly.
apply.
That's the classic sort of thing.
But it accurately explains, not just vaguely explains. It does not accurately explain.
The next one, you cannot be moral without being religious.
So you put strongly disagree?
Yeah.
Okay, I put agree. Because I feel like, I'm not saying you as a person, but that like in the backbone of the country's foundation or something. It's in there somewhere. Religion is in there somewhere for a lot of morality that exists in. And that's why I didn't put strongly agree. I just think, but it is rooted, it's woven into the fabric of morals.
Okay, I took that as at a more individual level because it says you cannot be moral, as in a person. Like a person cannot be moral without being religious. That's how I took it. Yeah. What would you say to that? Like not on a collective societal level, but at an individual level. I put disagree. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Because
I agree with what you said. I think like society is religious to a large extent, even if people don't realize it or accept it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing in some ways.
Yeah. I guess one thing too is like I would put disagree because like non-religious people can have morals too, right? Like once again,
that seems to me like it's what the question is getting at.
But my thing is like I do think there are some morals that tend to be religious for some reason. I guess like abortion, right? Like that seems to be religious. So I couldn't put strongly disagree because I think of that as a moral thing that it seems religious people have that non-religious people don't have as often. Like pro-life, pro-choice is where you like, and I think of that. And my idea of it is I'm pro-life due to my moral of it.
Yeah.
Right. So I couldn't put strongly disagree because of stuff like that, I guess. But I would put disagree, I guess, because there is a large portion of the morals that I have as morals that non-Christians and non-religious people can have. Right? You're not going to kill someone. That's right. Like, and even that's extreme, but even to a more vague sense of morals, you and me can still agree on a lot of things. Right? I just wouldn't put strongly disagree because of like pro-life, pro-choice or whatever. Right?
Okay. So, fair. This is interesting. Charity is a better social security as a means of helping the genuinely... charity is better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged.
What'd you put?
I put strongly disagree.
I put agree.
Okay.
I mean...
I don't think it's better because I think it's a lot less reliable. Like, do you think, like... Charity, by definition, seems to be less reliable than social security.
I don't know. I also thought of it, though, as like... how effective and efficient charity can be versus Social Security, because Social Security isn't efficient. right? Like the dollar you put in and the dollar you get out of it. I was thinking more from an economic
How efficient
standpoint.
can charity be?
If I give you $5, you get $5. Like that, it's 100% efficient.
Yeah, but it's if you're an organization, you obviously need to take some of that.
Yeah,
to cover
and
your
there's
costs,
depending
right?
on the charity you're giving to, there's charts you can see that a lot of them have been surveyed, but it is, from my understanding, better than the government.
The way I thought about it was like if we're in a severe economic recession, like if we're in the Great Depression and people don't have money to give to charity, then charity is useless, right? And Social Security in that case is now required.
I mean, you don't get weird with though is that Social Security only exists because we've paid a bunch of tax money towards it. So if you had an economic crisis and didn't have Social Security, you would have more money from not paying as much in taxes.
Yeah, I mean,
but you'd probably spend that.
You would like to think that there'd be some money in the bank, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm disagreeing. Maybe I'm agreeing. I'm neutral-ish on it.
Yeah.
I think they both serve a very important purpose.
No, they do. Yeah. But as a principle, I would just disagree, based on the reliability thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Some people are naturally unlucky. I could agree.
I put strongly. I don't believe luck like that, so I put strongly disagree.
You don't think there are unlucky
I had
people?
a pause though. I'm gonna hit next. I'm like, shoot, no, because I don't agree with like luck and unluck as a premise. But you could be born in a bad situation, which was luck of the draw, I guess. That could affect your life. But as far as your choices and like a meteor hitting you or like a car crash or whatever, like that's not. There isn't inherent unluck. It's just chance.
Dude, I think you're pretty unlucky if a meteor hits you.
That's statistics. It's not luck or unluck. It's statistics. It's going to happen to somebody at some point randomly. It's not
but
you're
if you're that person, that's unlucky
I guess it's
for
your
you.
definition of luck and unluck.
You know what I mean?
But there's not somebody that's just more. Somebody isn't just finding more money on the ground because they're lucky. It's just that the natural probability distribution, right? Like that's how I'm.
But thinking about it on an individual level, yes,
sure.
Someone at some point is going to get struck by lightning. But if you're that person, you're unlucky.
Okay, it's a definition. So you're thinking of unlucky as more of an abstract title given to someone after the fact, rather than a trait in their personality almost.
Yeah,
like I was taking it as a literal luck unluck kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, an RPG game, you have your luck skill and you can bump it up and you get more loot from enemies, right? Like that's how I was interpreting.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. We're discovering that this test is actually very interpretive.
Yeah.
And so maybe in that case, it could affect the results.
Yeah. But is that intentional though? Are they thinking that authoritative people are more likely to interpret certain ways and stuff too?
Yeah. Actually, that's interesting.
It is important that my child's school instills religious values.
I could disagree.
Okay.
No, it's important that it says my child.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important part of this question. I wouldn't want my child to go to a Christian school, so I would put disagree. But in principle, I think if you want your child to go to a religious school, that's fine.
I put agree. So literally, I didn't put strongly agree because I also don't know what religious values the school would be teaching, and it's not like that's the governing authority on religious values of the school, right? So that's why I didn't put strongly agree. So I put agree.
Right.
Also, what do you mean by values? Do you mean like religious morals, like
yeah?
Because even then, maybe answers change a bit too. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. What did you say?
I put agree, religiously speaking.
Okay.
Yeah. Would you put strongly disagree?
I put strongly disagree.
Okay.
So now,
Oh, this is weird. So do you think people who have sex outside of marriage are immoral?
I don't think they are immoral in like how I wouldn't say if I do something that's immoral doesn't make me inherently immoral. I think it as an act is an immoral thing religiously, biblically.
So you're okay. Oh, so you're talking about it, just the act, not the person who commits it.
Yeah,
okay.
That's what I'm saying. Is the act outside of marriage is usually immoral.
Okay, interesting.
Right. So that's why.
Makes sense.
But that's not, like I said, doesn't make you immoral.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't make maybe in some sense we're all immoral and moral, right? Like
no, but so there are religious people who would say that. Well, I guess is my counter.
Yeah,
there are religious people who think.
Does it make sure? If you want to replace that with is that a sin? It is a sin. Does that make you sinful? Sure. In the exact same way that me doing something makes me sinful, though, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's not like that sexual immoralness is making you sin, right? It's that we're all sinful by nature in a sense, right? That's how I would take it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption.
What'd you put?
I put strongly agree.
I put agree.
Okay.
I'm like, wouldn't be ideal in my mind. I feel like a lot of people would agree that in theory, like father and mother having both of the tendencies.
I would agree with that. I would agree. The nuclear family is better comparatively. I took it from the angle of restriction.
That's why I just couldn't put strongly agree. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe you need to regulate it to some degree. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't even think you should.
Yeah, I don't. I just don't.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a gut instinct thing again, right? Like we're saying, like it's supposed to be a quick thought. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I did bring in the hierarchy of preferability into it. The nuclear family being, I think, the ideal one, and that's why I just didn't put strongly agree. So, okay. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population.
I put agree.
I put disagree in the same sense of, I mean, maybe that's the exact opposite argument of marijuana now that I think about it. But just that, like, in theory, I don't think it's great because you're also looking at you're looking at what it does to the people that are in it usually and, like, the trauma in there and, like, how a lot of that's actually heavily involved in, like, kind of some weird
I mean, it does say here consenting adults, which I think tries to.
Yeah. But how, even that, though, I wonder what level, like, the production of that is also in the production of other more illicit forms.
Oh, for sure.
Right? So that's why I was like, I disagree.
You can take these questions to all different tangents.
So did you put strongly agree?
No, I put agree. I mean, porn is obviously not great, but I don't think it should be restricted or illegal. Yeah. So I
wonder, too, but your tangents you take and how far you take some tangents have a bias. That's right? Like, you don't take tangents as far when it favors you. And, like, you do it depending on how much it favors you, which is kind of, not you, but both of us. Yeah. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state.
I would strongly agree.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
not up to the state.
Sure.
Yeah.
I thought you were authoritarian.
0.13
out of 10.
But we figured out based on the one question earlier that might not be the case because I misread it or something.
There we go. No one can feel naturally homosexual.
Making sure I got the negatives right here. No one can feel. Yeah, what'd you put?
Strongly disagree.
Me too. Yeah.
Okay.
I think some Christians think it's a nurture thing, not a nature thing. I think it's a nature thing. I just think it's a sinful thing. That's nature. Just like how a lot of nature things are sinful, right? I don't know.
So why do you think some religious people insist that it's a choice?
I honestly
don't know.
I wouldn't know. Yeah, I could meditate.
There's absolutely nothing you can.
Nothing comes to mind right now.
Really?
And the people that are trying to get the 30 questions are like, yeah.
There's got to be something.
I don't know. I would assume people think. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Really?
I honestly don't know. Yeah, I think maybe somehow nurture can bring it to the forefront. Maybe, sure. I don't know. I'm not even saying I think that, but I admit maybe in some cases. But it's a nature thing. I think it's like I don't know if you'd call it a mental thing. I'm not saying mental like a disability. I'm not saying, but it is a mental thing. Like it's something in your brain that's making you think a certain way. It's nature.
So you, as a conservative Baptist Christian, would you prefer it if your subsect of Christianity kind of progressed on that?
Well, no, it's still sinful. Like it's still sinful. I don't think it's progressing in anything.
I mean, in saying it's a choice. Like, would you prefer if the general consensus amongst conservative Christians was that it wasn't a choice?
Probably,
did you follow that?
Yes, I certainly would say probably, but I also want to emphasize that that's not to say it's not a sin or that it's more.
No, I'm
okay,
talking
right? Like,
purely about like
religiously or
biblically. Do you choose to be gay purely?
Yeah, no, I would say it's mostly nature.
Okay.
Whatever that degree of mostly is, I don't know, but it's mostly nature.
Okay, sure. Yeah. These days, openness about sex has gone too far.
Strongly agree.
Okay, I could disagree.
Okay, I'm thinking about it in the very modern sense too now of like teachers telling kids the gender.
Okay, that's different, and I agree 100% on that.
Yeah.
I'm just.
So, but that's what these days openness has gone too far. I think that's what the openness is that's gone too far, right? Like there is openness that has gone too far. That's why I put
the way I was thinking about it was like, if you're just having like a conversation with people, like, you know, if you're in a group of friends and you make some sex jokes,
I'm thinking about it more in a societal sense, right? I'm thinking about like as a broad society and how it's depicted, right? It's that like, I don't know, like, do you need to have like, why do you have to bring attention to some of these things to kids, right? Like, I don't know, like, does a 3-year-old really need to be?
No, I agree. I agree. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that's mostly it, isn't it?
Is that everything?
Yeah.
Oh, that was everything. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, interesting.
So that's it. We're just a couple right-wing bigots or something.
Yeah, right-leaning bigots. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's interesting too because I remember taking this test in high school, and my social studies teacher, because we took this test in social studies, and I liked my social studies teacher a lot, and she openly admitted to us that she was like very left and very authoritarian, and I remember like hearing that and then comparing that to mine, and I was like, oh, that's interesting because I like her, like she's a good, I don't know, it's interesting comparing.
So,
results.
What does left authoritarian look like? I feel like that's the only quadrant that doesn't really make sense to me.
Dude, that's like every social justice warrior ever. You know what I mean? It's like you're left you're left wing because you're
like economically kind of.
Economically, sure, but I think socially is the more like you're left wing socially, but you're authoritarian about it in the sense that like you want to restrict the views of...
In communism's authoritarian left.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I guess. It just kind of seems at odds because you think of left being do what you want. Then you think of authoritarians don't do what you want.
So when you think of left libertarian, because
that
to me is the one that makes the least amount of sense.
Because I would assume left libertarian is the least amount of laws on all things, marijuana use, drugs, sexuality, and stuff. That's how I would think of that.
So then a right-leaning libertarian.
That would be also the least amount of laws on things, the least restrictions economically.
So is left and right purely... Oh, it even says that. It says left and right is the economic scale, and then authoritarian libertarian is the social scale. Okay, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that starts to make more sense. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think libertarian right makes a lot of sense. Authoritarian right makes a lot of sense.
So now coming at it from that perspective, you would think that as a conservative Christian, you would be a little bit higher on the authoritarian end, but you are actually pretty much dead center, which to me indicates that you're pretty progressive, at least compared to other Baptist Christians, right?
Maybe in some senses, but like the authoritarian socialness was like putting laws on that. There was like some of those racist questions were authoritarian questions too, though. That's the thing too. So that bumps me down.
Sure.
Liberal, right? It's like if you get rid of those, I probably would have been slightly more authoritarian.
Right.
Yeah. Or sorry, not liberal, libertarian. Yeah.
But still pretty moderate, all things considered. And you did answer questions. You did answer some questions in a way that you wouldn't expect a very conservative Christian to answer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to harp on the topic too much. But
I know, I think there's a difference too, though, of if homosexuality is a sin, does that mean you put a law on it, though? And that's kind of where I'm at, right? You know what I mean? Like, do you... Is making it illegal the response to sin?
Okay. Yeah.
Right? I don't know.
Fair.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that works in every sense. I think in some senses it works because abortion, in my sense, it's killing somebody. But homosexuality is two consenting people committing a sin.
I mean, is abortion even a sin? Or is that just... Are you purely approaching that from like a right and wrong
standpoint? I think it'd be a sin. I would argue it's murder, I guess. So, yeah, that in that sense, it'd be a sin.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. How long was this one?
Dude, we're like over 2 hours.
Are we actually? No, we're not.
Oh, no, hour and a half.
That's still pretty good. We're thinking it could be a really short one, but we also thought it could be a...
Yeah, no, that went pretty good, actually. That's our standard sort of podcast length, I think.
I have a very good topic for the next one, by the way. We'll talk about it when this turns off,
All right,
is that everything?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
That was pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, and as always, ciao for now.